Hi, we're going to talk about Roman Seville today, and we're going to take a little stroll through Seville and try to find some Roman remains. Now, sadly, there's not a whole lot left, although Seville was one of the most important cities in the Roman Empire and provincial Rome outside of Italy, outside of Rome. And it was a great city, but over the centuries, they've built on top of the existing structures. They've used that stone for other purposes. So there's not a whole lot to see in the center of Seville, but we're going to take a look at what we can find. Let's start with the walls. Seville was a walled city. It was founded by Julius Caesar, and he decided to build a massive stone wall around the city. And sadly, the wall has been demolished in many sections, but there's still a few places left. This is one of the nicest ones in Barrio Santa Cruz. It's called the Calle Agua because this is where an aqueduct came and united with the wall, and then the canalization, the water canal, is actually part of this section wall. So the name Calle Agua, Water Street, is a good name for this beautiful part of Barrio Santa Cruz. Now, the Roman wall once wrapped all the way around the city of Seville. In fact, if you look at your map of modern-day Seville, you'll notice there's a ring road that goes around the entire city center, and that's where the actual wall was, and in some cases, that's where there's still large sections of the wall existing. The wall was originally built by Romans in 1st century BC, and it's mostly built with stone, but it was added onto and repaired and expanded in Islamic times. In fact, in 844 AD, the Vikings attacked and ransacked Seville, and that's when the Emir of Cordoba, Abderrahman II, decided it was time to improve the wall. The next renovations were also in Islamic times. In 1023, in the reign of Abu al-Qasim, the first king of the Taifa of Seville. Later, we've got the Almohads, also an Islamic kingdom in Seville. And finally, in 1248, Ferdinand III, known as San Fernando, conquered Seville and made it a Christian city. Later, in the time of Charles V, early 16th century, 1526, Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor Carlos V, did some remodeling on the wall, and they made some of the gates into a Renaissance style. Sadly, most of those gates are no longer with us. There were once 18 gates on the walls of Seville. Today, there's only 4 left. What we have here is the largest remaining section of the walls. Unfortunately, many other parts of the walls were destroyed in the 19th century and the early 20th century. This is the most famous of the gates still standing today, the Arco de la Macarena. Okay, let's take a look at the aqueduct of Seville, the Roman aqueduct. It originally ran for over 17 kilometers through canals, and it had sections which were built up with arches in sort of a bridge-like fashion like this to bring water to Seville from a reservoir which was east of town, about 17 kilometers at Alcalá, and it provided water for the city of Seville. In the day, there were over 410 archways, which actually made it the longest aqueduct in Spain, even longer than the magnificent aqueduct in Seville. Sadly, most of the aqueduct has been knocked down. In 1911, when the city was expanding, they demolished sections of the archways, and now today there's only 3 existing sections. We can see one here, and if you look off in the distance, you can see a double arch. The double arch is an interesting invention which the Romans used to get more height, because they could only build the archways up so high they became unstable. So by stacking one set of arches on another, they could achieve more heights. You might notice these arches are made with brick, and that's because they were rebuilt in the 13th century, 1272 more or less, by the Almohads, the Islamic rulers of Seville. And they took advantage of the existing aqueduct, but the Romans tended to build in stone, and the Islamic builders preferred brick. So we do see a lot of brick in the existing sections of the aqueducts. Okay, we're here at the Calle Marmoles, which means marbles, at the remains of Hadrian's Temple. It's called Calle Marmoles, but these are actually made from Egyptian granite. The bases are marble. What we see here are 3 massive, solid, one-piece shafts of columns made from granite. They appear to be deep underground. They're 5 meters below the actual level of the ground right now. That's because over the centuries, the level of the ground has risen. It was once, Seville was once much lower, but over the centuries, as they built new constructions, they tended to knock the old ones down and build up on the rubble. And so, over the last 2,000 years, the level of the city's actually risen. We look at these, we see a row of 3. Well, there was once 2 rows of 3 here, and that made a rectangular shape with the gable, the triangular end of the roof up above, and another row of stone columns here. So what happened to those columns? 2 of those we're going to go take a look at now, and they are now in the Alameda of Hercules. In the 16th century, they decided to drain a swamp and make a really nice park, and they moved 2 of these columns to that place. There's a lot of dispute what happened to the 3rd one. Some people say that it was broken in that movement when they moved to the Alameda. Other sources say that King Pedro I wanted it in the Alcázar, and so he had it dragged down the Calle Mateos Gago towards the royal palace at the Alcázar, and it was broken up in that movement. I don't know. Nobody really knows. They've never found the missing piece. They're not even sure who the deity of this temple was. They tend to say it was dedicated originally to Hercules, who's very popular here in Seville. They love Seville. And the myth, the legend is Hercules himself founded Seville and placed these columns there. Of course, that's just silly. This temple was founded by Hadrian, and it might have been dedicated to his father, Trajan, who's also from here in Seville, Italica. Okay, we're at the Alameda de Hercules. It's a nice area. It's a park, a sort of a rectangular paseo with two massive columns at one end and two columns at the other. These ones are the original granite columns which were brought over from the Calle Marmoles in the 16th century. At the far end are some replicas, and they're not as authentic. They're built in sections. They're not solid shafts of stone like these. If we look at the top, we can see Hercules and Julius Caesar. Legend has it Hercules founded Seville, and Julius Caesar is the one who really founded it. In Roman times, Seville was called Hispalis, which is where the name Seville has been derived from. Hispalis means built with poles, and that's because there was a massive inland lake, which is now the Guadalquivir. It's a much smaller river, but in those days it was an inland sea, Lake Lingustus. And so the little hills in Seville, like around Cuesta de Rosario, and parts of Triana, was where Hispalis was built. And then, kind of like Venice, they actually built sections on poles, which of course long since been lost. This whole area was just a big lagoon. And in the 16th century, they dried up the lagoon and they built this park. So the Alameda de Hercules, it was originally kind of an aristocratic area where the nobles and wealthy people had their second residences, and there's still a few palaces. One that once belonged to the Marquis of Esquivel is down there. And then it fell into sort of a decadent period. Even 20, 30 years ago, this was kind of a bad neighborhood, but they cleaned it up, and now they've gentrified it, and it's all filled with bars and cafes and restaurants, and it's actually the place to be. So if you come to Seville, you should definitely come here on a Sunday afternoon or a Friday or Saturday night. A lot of young people, a lot of students. It kind of has a bohemian crowd, kind of an artsy crowd, and lots of cool bars and places to hang out. So make sure you come visit the Alameda de Hercules. Okay, so that's about all we have. There's a couple more things I'll show you later in the class, but that's about all there is to Roman Seville, still existing today. It was once one of the finest cities in the entire Roman Empire. In fact, Julius Caesar loved it so much that he called it Nova Roma. And there's a few other things we'll take a look at. The ruins of Italica, they're 14 kilometers northwest of here. And we'll see some a Roman bridge in Cordoba. And we'll move on and see more things, Islamic, Mudéjar, Gothic, you name it.